Did you feel betrayed?
I felt betrayed because he felt betrayed because that's my guy. It's my best friend.
DeMar DeRozan, born August 7th, 1989. DeMar DeRozan's career has always been easy to define on the surface, a six-time All-Star, one of the league's most consistent scorers, and a player who's quietly climbed into the top tier of all-time points without ever dominating headlines. And for years, that production came with expectations, franchise player expectations. In Toronto, he was handed the keys early and asked to lead a team trying to break through in the Eastern Conference. And while the numbers always showed up, the results never quite matched the role. Playoff exits, tough matchups, and eventually a ceiling that became harder to ignore. Because the deeper you look into DeRozan's career, the more it starts to feel like something didn't quite line up. Not with his talent, but with what was asked of it. And that gap between perception and reality is where his story really begins. What happened? Let's talk about it. Salute to Mr. Creative on IG for this request. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know who I should do next. DeMar DeRozan is a 6'6" shooting guard from Compton, California. A McDonald's All-American out of Compton High, he entered USC as one of the most athletic and highly anticipated prospects in his class, touted as a future NBA star even back then. In his lone college season, DeRozan averaged 13.9 points and showed flashes of elite scoring ability, though questions remained about his shooting and overall offensive polish. 13.9 is cool, but not what you would expect from a future NBA franchise guy. Still, his upside as a slashing scorer and high-level athlete made him a top prospect, and he was selected 9th overall in the 2009 NBA draft by the Toronto Raptors. Early in his career, DeRozan developed into one of the league's most consistent and athletic scoring guards. By his fourth season, he was averaging over 18 points per game, eventually becoming a 20-point-per-game scorer year after year. As Toronto transitioned into a competitive team in the Eastern Conference, DeRozan emerged as its primary offensive option, alongside Kyle Lowry, who helped to lead the Raptors to multiple playoff appearances, including several 50-win seasons and a trip to the Eastern Conference Finals in 2016. Over time, DeRozan built a resume that included multiple All-Star selections and All-NBA recognition, solidifying himself as one of the most productive guards of his era. But as the team's expectations grew, so did the responsibility placed on him to lead not just Toronto, but every team he's been on deeper into the postseason. But year after year, that has fell short of happening. Stunt number 1, the role he was given was too big. From early in his career, DeMar DeRozan wasn't just developing into a productive player, he was being positioned as something much bigger. In Toronto, he wasn't brought along as a complementary piece or slowly integrated into a winning structure. Instead, as the franchise searched for direction, he became the direction. A young scorer turned into the face of the team and eventually the player everything revolved around. And to his credit, he answered that call in the ways that showed up the most. Year after year, his scoring climbed, his confidence as a shot creator grew, especially in the mid-range where he became one of the most dependable options in the league. By the mid-2010s, DeRozan wasn't just productive, he was consistent. A 20-plus point scorer, multiple-time All-Star, and the centerpiece of a Raptors team that was now winning 50 games and finishing near the top of the Eastern Conference. But while the results looked like progress, the foundation they were built on told a slightly different story. DeRozan was evolving into an elite scorer, but not necessarily into the type of all-around engine most championship teams are built around. His game thrived in controlled, half-court situations, relying heavily on isolation and mid-range creation. What it didn't naturally provide was floor spacing, high-level playmaking, or defensive impact that could consistently elevate a team beyond its system. Still, because Toronto was winning, those limitations weren't being questioned, they were being overlooked. Success in the regular season reinforced the belief that DeRozan could carry that same role deeper into the postseason. So instead of adjusting the structure around him, the expectation became that he would eventually grow into everything the role demanded. And that's where the disconnect really started to take shape. The Raptors didn't just have a go-to scorer, they had a player they were treating like a franchise centerpiece at the highest level and waiting for him to grow into that. But those two things aren't always the same. One produces numbers, the other drives outcomes. For a while, that difference didn't matter. The wins were there, the recognition followed, and DeRozan continued to build a career that on paper looked like steady growth. But underneath that success, the gap between what he was and what he was expected to be never fully closed, and as the stakes got higher, that gap was only going to become harder to ignore. Stunt number 2, the playoffs exposed the ceiling. As Toronto continued to rise in the regular season, the expectations around DeMar DeRozan rose with it. By the mid-2010s, the Raptors weren't just a good team, they were viewed as legitimate contenders in the Eastern Conference. Multiple 50-win seasons, high playoff seeding, and a consistent presence near the top of the standings all pointed toward a team that looked ready to take the next step. But once the playoffs began, the environment changed and so did the results. The same style that made DeRozan so effective during the regular season became harder to rely on against elite defenders. The game slowed down, matchups became more focused, and the space he thrived in during the regular season started to disappear. His efficiency would dip, his scoring became more difficult, and the offense as a whole often struggled to generate consistent production when it mattered most. Not to mention his lack of consistent clutch play. And then there was LeBron James. Year after year, Toronto ran into Cleveland, and year after year, the outcome was the same. No matter how strong the Raptors looked during the regular season, those playoff series exposed a clear difference in ceiling, not just between teams, but between the type of player leading them. While LeBron controlled every aspect of the game, DeRozan's impact remained more limited to scoring, and when that scoring became inefficient, it affected everything else. By 2018, that reality became impossible to ignore. Despite finishing as the number 1 seed in the East, the Raptors were swept by Cleveland in the second round. In one of the most telling moments of that series, DeRozan was benched late in a crucial game, not because of injury, but because the team needed something different in that moment. And then came the turning point. That offseason, Toronto made a decision that would redefine how DeRozan's time there was viewed. They traded him for Kawhi Leonard. No rebuild, no reset, just a direct swap at the top. And with largely the same core still in place, the Raptors went on to win the championship in Kawhi's first and only season with the team. The structure didn't change, the expectations didn't change. The only thing that changed was the type of player in that role. And in that moment, the difference between a high-level scorer and a true franchise driver became impossible to overlook. Stunt number 3, the league changed and left him behind. As DeMar DeRozan moved into the later stages of his career, the NBA itself was no longer the same league he had entered. The style of play had shifted dramatically. Teams were no longer looking for scorers, they were building around players who could stretch defenses, create efficient offense from the perimeter, and impact the game in multiple ways at once. The three-point shot wasn't just an option anymore, it was a foundation. But DeRozan's game remained rooted in a different era. He continued to dominate in the mid-range, relying on footwork, timing, and tough shot making to produce at a high level. And quite honestly, he may be the most exciting mid-range player the league has seen since Kobe Bryant. Night after night, he could still give you 20 to 25 points without a three-point shot. But the way those points came didn't always align with how teams were generating offense. While others extended defenses, his presence often allowed them to stay compact. That difference didn't make him ineffective, but it did make him harder to build around, especially at the highest level. At the same time, the expectations for top players were evolving. The league's elite weren't just scoring, they were spacing the floor, facilitating offense, and controlling the tempo of the game. DeRozan's strengths remained specific. He could get to his spots, but his game didn't naturally expand into every area teams now prioritize when building contenders. To his credit, he adjusted where he could. During his time in San Antonio, his playmaking took a noticeable step forward. He became more patient with the ball, more willing to create for others, and more comfortable operating within a system rather than dominating it. That growth carried into his time in Chicago, where he continued to produce at a high level while showing a more complete offensive approach. But by then, the league had already defined its direction, and more importantly, teams had already defined how they viewed him. He was no longer being evaluated as someone who could lead a team to a championship, but as someone who could complement one. His production remained steady, his skill set remained valuable, but the role he once held and the expectations that came with it no longer matched the type of player teams were prioritizing at the top of the league. All in all, DeMar DeRozan's career didn't fall apart, it just never matched the level it was expected to reach. He gave teams consistent production, multiple All-Star seasons, and one of the most reliable scoring skill sets of his era. Year after year he delivered, but the role he was placed in consistently asked for more than what his game naturally provided. As a primary option, especially in the postseason, those limitations became harder to overcome and eventually harder to ignore. And when Toronto made a direct change at that position, the results spoke for themselves. At the same time, it's fair to question whether DeRozan was ever put in the right situation to begin with. Throughout his career, he was almost always the player teams depended on most, rather than someone playing alongside a clear top-tier option. There was never a moment where he could fully settle into a secondary role that may have better matched his strengths, and because of that, his career has often been judged through a lens that may not have been built for him in the first place. Salute, much respect, but for these reasons, him as a franchise player has always been an illusion. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out.